Hey, this is the old gaming geezer. Welcome along to another episode of A Wing and a Prayer. And here you can see me flying my wonderful plane out over the poles in order to gain some science, because after the last episode when things went horribly wrong, I needed to get more science in order to get up into space. So, here we are, landing at the poles. We're going to do some science, pick up some points, maybe unlock some stuff, and maybe build a space plane. Now, last time we lost poor Jebediah, but don't worry, Jebediah returned from the grave like a new green Jesus. But during the week, I tried out a lot of planes. It was a tough week. I had to recover from the emotional trauma of Game of Thrones, and I spent a lot of time trying some planes that I wanted to get into orbit, like the one you see on screen here. I'm getting it up there, and everything's looking great until, of course, it starts to roll out of control, which happens quite a lot, as I'm sure you can guess. So I tried lots of different plane designs. Valentina was doing her best. I liked this one. This one was working pretty well, I thought, until it got into the air, and I noticed that it was doing a lot of wobbling, and I thought that might be a problem. But, I figure, what could possibly go wrong? We'll keep on, that can possibly go wrong. So that really didn't work. So, there I'm trying to save it. But we tried, as I said, a lot of different variations. This one, this one I went down the more boosters route, but more boosters didn't really work, especially when we get to the end of the runway, and it all ends in fire and death. Fire and death are fun. Now, this one here was probably my favorite. It looks cool, but unfortunately it flies really bad. It takes off great. I love the big plumes of smoke behind it, but it's got the aerodynamic stability of a brick. Even with the help of its rocket engines, I just couldn't keep this thing under control. Once some of the fuel had gone out of it, it just spun and spun and spun and spun and spun. And there's me trying again with the engines, but no way. I couldn't get this one under control. It didn't even have the thrust to weight ratio to get into space, but luckily it did have an escape system, so Valentina was going to be just fine. So at this point I decided to try an old design, the first plane that got me into suborbital. I tried a variant of this, and as you can see, it just didn't quite work. It wobbled quite a bit, but there was some explosions. But man, that looks pretty cool, huh? The wings are going crazy. Well, so I tried again with less engines, so maybe less weight on the wings. I thought that might help. And initially things were looking good, but we're still getting a lot of wobble. And, we lost our engine there, but it's flying pretty well as long as you don't mind how it looks like a seagull trying to take off. It was an interesting design that kind of had a lot of problems, but it was a lot of fun to attempt to fly. I won't say that I actually managed to successfully fly it, but I did certainly attempt. I think I might call it a seagull. So, using some of the science that I managed to obtain by flying to the poles and the Badlands, I decided to buy some struts and try this design again, because I know this design can get me suborbital, and so this is a much bigger plane than the one that took me suborbital. I figured I might be able to get into orbit with this. If I fly up right, if I use the right ascent trajectory, I think I could do it. And as we can see now, the wings are not flapping like crazy. We are going to get up, I hope. So I'm bringing it up nice and trim, as they say, and it's flying very stable. It's working really well. We're going to get up and trying to get up to about 5.5 kilometers, and then turn up, fire our engines as we go, and then we're going to dump those wings, and they're going to go any second. There they go. There they go. And so this was quite difficult to keep pointing upwards. It actually wanted to come down. It wanted to nose down, but I managed to keep it nosed up. Although I did have to let the nose go down a little bit in order to get a really good gravity turn, because fuel here is vital. If I don't have enough fuel by the time I get out of the atmosphere, then this whole flight is for nothing. But eventually, here's me in nice gravity turn, about 45 degrees. My apoapsis is rising, and it's around about now that I realize I'm over the 70-kilometer mark. I'm at about 75 kilometers, shut down the engines, and now we coast up to our apoapsis, where we will burn hopefully the last of our fuel to get into orbit. And we'll pick up a little bit of science on the way, of course, as we are wont to do. We're going to be spending that science soon enough on more cool goodies in order to get us into space. So Valentina is looking very, very pleased with herself now as we approach our apoapsis. She's getting ready to burn the engines and attempt to put us into an orbit. She's getting close now. And there she goes. Engines are burning. Valentina is going to do it. She's going to get us into orbit. I'm pretty confident at this point. We have not a hell of a lot of fuel left, but we do have another stage with a Terrier engine. An LV909 Terrier in there. We're going to see that in just a second there. We're going to drop our ascent stage now. There it goes. And then we're going to fire that Terrier, and we're going to get Valentina into orbit. This is not what I originally had in mind. I wanted it to be a space plane that I could land and keep as much of my funds as possible. But there's two things that are making that not happen. The first is I don't have the technology, but more importantly than that, I do not have the skills. I'm sure somebody like Scott Manley or Tyler Riaz or Guard or Hawk Gaming could probably have gotten a space plane into orbit with the technology that I have. But hey, I am not one of those people. I am just some schmo screwing around with this game. Whew. So Valentina is burning like crazy. Any second now, the camera is going to flip. I actually cannot read the writing from the... I can't read the telemetry. There it is. The camera is flipping. Oh, almost. Something happened there. Oh, we are officially in orbit. The camera did flip. It's just the angle. It didn't look like it. Yeah, what I was saying is I can't read the telemetry on the top of the screen from Kerbal Engineer. And so, there we are. We have made it to orbit. Valentina, of course, will get out. She will do her crew report. And we're going to do all of our experiments. We can't do all of... We've done some of our space experiments in close orbit around Kerbal already, even though we weren't in orbit. But we're getting as much as she can. Of course, she's also hanging outside of the spaceship as we go over different biomes. I'm trying to maximize the amount of science I can bring back from this mission. Valentina's doing a great job. Excellent. Valentina, of course, being our current star pilot. As I said, Jebediah has returned, but at this point he had not yet returned. I have played a little bit after I did this, and Jebediah is now back. So there's no need to worry. Those of you out there who were worried about the fate of Jebediah Kerman, there is no need for you to worry, because he has returned from the grave. He's back, and he's ready to take up his mantle as the premier pilot in the Kerbal Space Program. Although, Valentina now is getting a hell of a lot of experience that Jeb doesn't have, because Valentina's now been to orbit, and Jebediah has not. But Valentina is going to have to start getting ready to come home now. There she is, still hanging outside the ship, getting as much science from different biomes as she can. Checking out what I've got. I've got a lot of science. I'm fairly happy that things are going to go well here. But we do have to bring Valentina home. I have no intention of this particular spaceship burning up in the atmosphere, so we're coming down very, very shallowly. My periapsis is at about 42 or 43 kilometers. Now, just as we hit the upper atmosphere, we get to do some materials-based science. So we are now in the atmosphere, and I got Valentina out of the ship and got her to climb down and grab the data out of the materials bay, because we will be dumping it. So a little extra science, a little bit of a dangerous move, but up here in this thin atmosphere, it's going to be okay. So Valentina turns the ship around and turns it around a little bit too far, and of course has to go back. But eventually she's pointing retrograde, and it's time now to dump our orbit stage. There's still a little fuel in there, but it's useless to us now. We just need to get rid of it. It's just extra weight. And we don't want to slow down too much, because we don't want to come in too steep because that way lies fiery, fiery death. And unfortunately, we're going to have to come down on the night side because somebody in mission control made the mistake of timing the retro burn, the deorbit burn, at such a point where, we were going to come down at night. So everything's going to be quite dark from here on in. I don't know who the person is at mission control who made this mistake, but rest assured they will be fired. Now, here she is. Valentina has hit the atmosphere. We're getting flash heating, ionized air building up around the capsule as the heat and friction on the surface heats it up. But, as I said, we're coming in very shallow, so we're slowing down. Well, we're slowly decelerating. I'm fairly happy at this point that we're going to survive. Everything is going to be okay. Valentina, she's she's a composite professional. She knows exactly what she's doing. Not that she's doing anything, she's just sitting in there hoping that the capsule won't burn up around her. And I'm checking here. I'm trying to find out, is there any information on, ablative heating on the pods, and there isn't. That's only on the heat shields, which I have looked at. But, it's gone pretty well. I'm scared, but I'm not that scared. I mean, there was a big scare we got last time when my space plane burned up. But I have successfully gotten these things down before without heat shields. Maybe that was before we had the atmospheric heating. I don't really know. No, I have done it in the current version of the game. So, since we've had atmospheric heating, I've gotten capsules down without the heat shields. And there we are. We are through. We are slow enough now, so we are no longer heating up. And we're going to come down nice and slow. Sorry it's on the night side, but nothing I can do about that right now. But we're coming down, deploy our parachute. We get closer down, and we're going to land in the ocean, in the beautiful blue ocean of Kerbal. And there she is, safely home again at last. First Kerbal to orbit the planet. She's a hero. Ticker tape parades all around, that's what I say. Well, I have done it. I have managed to orbit Kerbal by taking off only from the spaceplane hangar, from the runway, and only building in the spaceplane hangar. Will we go on? Maybe we will. This has been a really tough series, but I kind of said that I would try and get as far as the moon, and I think that's where I'm going to go next, as Valentina attempts to get back on the capsule and failing miserably, but, that's my own fault. Anyway, this is the Old Gaming Geezer signing off. It took me more than a week to record this episode, so that's one of the reasons why it's been so long. Until next time, good night, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, adieu. Hey, if you like this video, hit like below. If you really like this video, why don't you subscribe? Bye-bye.